Good morning for those who joined already. We're going to wait a few more minutes until everybody has joined the webinar. Right, can still see people joining. So let's wait 2 or 3 more minutes before we're going to start.
I think we're good to go.
Yep, good to go. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Ruben van Achter. I am the Business Development Manager program for Veeam, VMware, Omnisa, Wasabi, and our latest addition to the portfolio, Object First at TD SYNNEX. Welcome to our Mastering Kubernetes Data Protection with Veeam Kasten webinar. Our goal for today is to provide you with valuable insights into the latest trends and best practices in the Kubernetes data protection space. The presentations of today will be given by Simon Williams, EMEA Sales Director for Kasten at Veeam, and James Tate, Senior System Engineer for Kasten at Veeam. Now, before we're going to start with the actual presentation, I would like to encourage everybody to make this session as interactive as possible. So feel free to pose your questions in the Q&A box. We'll try to answer them along the way or along the presentation. And we've also provided some time at the end of our presentation to answer any leftover questions as well. I think that being said, we can get started with the first part presented by Mr. Williams. So whenever you're ready, Simon, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you, Ruben, and also thank you for organising this, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk to your partner ecosystem about Kasten and about the trends that we're seeing in the marketplace. So I'll do introductions in a moment, but my name is Simon Williams, and what we're going to be going through today is for those of you that may possibly be already an existing Veeam partner. It's possible that you're here today because you're considering or learning more about what we do in the Kubernetes space. This could potentially be new to you, so this presentation is definitely going to be enlightening and hopefully educational. Or for those partners, part of TD SYNNEX's ecosystem, that maybe not have considered partnering with Veeam before, but you may be specialists in the space of Kubernetes and you're interested to see what it is that we offer around cyber resilience for those customers that are looking for that level of protection that they need in this modern era. So what I'm going to just take you through today is introduction just to the team, the specialist team. What's really important to get across to anyone that's on this call is what market trends are out there from some statistical point of view, what we're seeing that is driving the opportunity for companies like us, particularly Veeam, that are providing that cyber resilience wrap to those that have Kubernetes clusters, nodes, etc., etc. Then we're going to talk about why backup Kubernetes, because there's often this misnomer. There's this question that goes around the DevOps is, why do I need to even back up Kubernetes at all? And then James will be taking you through that. And then we're going to cover a really important area that we're seeing as a very big trend right now. We've labeled it Broadcom Exodus. It's those customers of VMware that are considering alternative technologies, and this is fueling a huge opportunity for us in revenue for us and distribution partners for those that are looking for containerization and putting VMs inside of containers. And then we'll discuss what technology and who we're partnering with, particularly in that space, which we'll be touching on the likes of Red Hat, are pretty huge in this space with Red Hat OpenShift. So without further ado, I'm the regional director for the UK, the Nordics, and Benelux. So I work alongside all of our partners, along with James, and all of our alliances or GSIs, and also our feed to sell team. I run the go-to-market strategy here, and this is part of what I do just to get the message across about the value proposition that we have. Within that team, joining me today is James Tate. James is a senior Kasten sales and engineer. Hi, James. Good to see you. James is the forefront individual that helps enable our partners. He runs the proof of concepts, supports installation, does many demos to anyone who's interested in our technology. So an important part of the team is James, because generally we're talking to technical people when we're in the selling motion. Also joining us today is Mila Chumak. She's part of our team as well. She works as a specialist within the team looking after our velocity and our SME segment, whilst I look after the commercial and the enterprise. So what is happening in the marketplace today? Look, everyone gets marketing slides. I tried to not to use them. I tried to design my own based on my own point of view from research that I do. And several months ago, I put this slide together. So I wanted to see, where was the market going with Kubernetes, because we started to see more customers come to want to talk to us. That customers could be a Veeam customer, because we have 500,000 of them, or it also could be what we consider to be white space, where, the Kubernetes deployment or the plans to deploy Kubernetes brings with it a security risk that they need to talk to us about. But what we're seeing in the marketplace today is quite an even split between enterprise and commercial or SME, small to medium enterprises. And the space for Kubernetes is growing so rapidly that it's got double-digit compound annual growth rate, which is predicted to reach around 10 billion in the next 10 years. And with that growth, with that exponential growth, then there's a requirement to buy technology. It could just be us, Veeam, for cyber resilience, or it could be a distribution model like Tanzu or Red Hat or AKS or EKS. All of these specialist vendors are seeing growth in this particular space and investing a huge amount of money. Say, for example, the partnership with Red Hat and AWS called ROSA. These organizations are investing in this technology to support this growth. And if we look at, for example, just taking one of them, Red Hat, and we look at their compound annual growth rate that is focused on, particularly Red Hat OpenShift, which, as you know, is a distribution engine for Kubernetes. They are reaching double-digit 35.6 compound annual growth rate over the next 10 years. And then with that, then we look at the verticalization, which also supports where we see opportunities. So if you're a partner and you happen to be strong in the manufacturing, retail, healthcare, or finance space, where we see the most opportunities or the most competitors, competitors, most wins that we get are within this space, and that makes sense, right? Healthcare, you'll be using an application to manage your appointments, looking at your medical records. With finance, day to day, we use banking apps to look at our statements, do financial transactions. Retail, ordering your goods online, Amazon is a great example of that. And then manufacturing could be the Kubernetes controlling manufacturing process through robotics. And then obviously government, for instance, in the Netherlands, we have the Ministry of Defense, which uses Kasten as a solution to protect their Kubernetes environment, is another good example. So if we look at this 95% predicted growth of all organizations by 2029 will be using some form of containerization, right? Then that creates this huge opportunity for us. But it also poses the question, what of those deployments would be stateful or stateless, which I'm not going to try and educate you this on today. But it is important when you're in an environment that is stateless, the requirement to protect your environments is limited. And it's where we receive the biggest objections. And as we have over the last few years, that has been quite a stagnating our growth. However, over the last 2 years, we've seen a monolithic growth in organizations that are deployed, but are looking at becoming what we call stateful. They do persistent volume calls into databases, into storage, and therefore that absolutely requires the reason to be backed up. So we have, for example, a number of global systems integrators that actually built Kubernetes environments. They provide DevOps support and dev security as a managed service. And they built these environments originally when they were stateless and they were self-healing. So they didn't particularly need to be backed up. Now, when you move towards that sort of database or you become stateful, there is a bigger requirement. So a lot of these GSIs are now coming to us and they're saying, well, actually, we need to change how we manage our customers' environments because we have no form of cyber resilience to be able to recover them in the event of bad code, malicious deletion, or a cyber threat, which is what we all know about today because it's prolific. It's around everywhere. We hear all the time the anxiety about everyone worried about being a cyber attack. Well, if you have your Kubernetes environment attacked and it's critical applications and workloads that are driving your business, I mean, the most recent events, if we look at in just the UK alone, Marks and Spencer's, Barclays Bank, the Co-op, they've all lost application access to their end users, which has costed them, brand degradation, loss of revenue, etc., etc. And now they all want to try and avoid that by putting a solution in place. And we are best placed to be able to provide that to those end users that are looking for that sort of technology. So without further ado, what we thought, James and I thought we would do is just firstly, before I go on to one of the biggest trends that we see, and I talk about the trends that we're seeing in the marketplace that's driving opportunities for our partners, which is leading to an increase in deal registrations. James is just going to explain to you what is Kasten, what does it do in a simplistic view, because obviously we're limited to time. So James, without further ado, over to you.
Sure. Okay, so
just go back. Yep.
Yep. So Kasten is essentially a data protection application for Kubernetes. Now, when we're talking about protecting Kubernetes, we're not actually talking about backing up the physical nodes that these reside on, because in a lot of infrastructure, this is built as code. So, infrastructure as code is rolled out through Terraform or Ansible or some other programmatic means like that. And you can rebuild a Kubernetes cluster literally within minutes. So there's no point in physically backing up the operating system of the worker nodes or the control plane nodes. But what we are interested in is the application and the application data. So everything Kasten does is based around the application as a unit of mobility and protection. Now, as Simon has mentioned, we do work in stateful and stateless. So there's two ways, there's a very sort of simple analogy of thinking of stateful and stateless. So stateful would be where, I have a mobile phone and my data is stored on the phone itself. Stateless would be where I have my mobile phone, but my data is stored in the cloud. Okay, so you can kind of think of it that way. One is where the data is inside the cluster. The other is where the data is outside the cluster. Now, we operate in both of these environments, but as Simon mentioned, there's more of a case, or more of a compelling business case where it's stateful. That's because if I lose the cluster, I lose the data as well. It's not physically air-gapped. We can operate in stateless environments, and there are, again, compelling reasons for doing so, more around, speedier time to recovery of complex environments. And where that becomes more prevalent is where you're rolling out a lot of your applications from some sort of GitOps pipeline platform via a CI/CD integration, and you have all this complexity that surrounds your application. If I lose that outside integration, I lose my Git, I lose my CI/CD, I lose the networking or the storage that it's all based upon. It can take a considerable amount of time to recover that, to the point where you're then able to deploy your Kubernetes clusters and your applications. Now, if that is unavailable for a considerable amount of time, then you're talking about a significant financial impact as well as reputational damage. If I can recover that to a dissimilar environment, I may take my corporate credit card and spin up an instance in the cloud, whether it's Amazon on EKS or Azure on AKS, doesn't matter. If I can recover my application stack temporarily to that location, whilst I fix my fire in my data center, I'm keeping my customers happy. I may not be 100% where I was, but I'm good enough to get by and good enough to actually stop the bleeding of your cache and your customers. So that's the sort of thing, that's where we can work. What makes Kasten a little bit unique in this market space is the fact that we are Kubernetes native. So we actually sit inside the cluster as a native application rather than being an outside data service. So there's no management server, there's no agents involved in any of this. We sit inside the cluster, you deploy as Helm, takes literally 5 minutes, and you're up, and you can be protecting your applications and doing backups again within about 5 minutes time. Next slide, please, Simon. So we talk about complete application recovery. So we're not just talking about the actual physical data itself, we're talking about all the components of the application, the stateful sets, the deployments, the networking information, the secrets, config maps, and the PVCs, literally everything that makes up that application, okay? And if we are talking about applications which are controlled by operators, we can also back up the operator functionality as well to make the application fully restorable. We allow you to do full granular control over what you're backing up and what you're restoring. So again, it's completely in your control. And part of this process is, everything that we do is driven through the Kubernetes API, which means you can automate any function of Kasten, as well as, a complete disaster recovery reinstall of the product and reconfiguration and recovery of the applications, which gives you, depending on your level of scripting, you can go down the route of doing DR as code, for example. So let's just hypothetically say I had a complete outage of my cluster. I could rebuild that cluster somewhere else. I could recover Kasten, I could recover the application stack, and I could do the entire thing automated as code. One script, press the button, it will recover your entire environment to somewhere else. It gives a very, very powerful capability. So you not only test your DR capability, but leverage, or remove human error from the process. You built these scripts, you've tested them, they work, and then at any point in time, you either, for your regulatory compliance or for a natural disaster, you just hit the script and away it goes. So it gives a very, very assured sense of the technology. Next slide, please. So a couple of things around sort of the data security side of what we do. We're very heavy on the sort of the compliancy and the regulations around data security, because obviously we work in a lot of highly secure environments for sort of like the banking sector, insurance, defense and intelligence and so forth. So multiple industry certifications and validations, including things like FIPS 140-3 and 27001 IEC. So this is, a lot of the sort of the frameworks that we work to. Alongside that, we have things such as full software bill of materials for our products. So every single package that's included and version, you can go in and we're fully upfront about all of that, as well as hosting our application images on both public and secured image repositories such as the IAM Bank and the DoD. We also support multiple different export locations that have immutability. So if you're worried about things like ransomware protection or malware protection, you can go down that. A lot of, regulatory compliance now specifies that your backups have to be held on immutable. So yeah, we support multiple different endpoints for that. We also integrate with multiple SIEM platforms. So if you want to do deep dive level log analysis and inspection of what the product is doing and see if anybody's sniffing around your backups, yeah, you can do that. Next slide, please. A little bit about data freedom. So Kasten was originally an independent company that was purchased by Veeam about sort of 4.5 years ago. And as such, the whole product stack was built around being completely agnostic in nature. So it doesn't really matter what Kubernetes distribution you have, what storage you have backing your cluster, what export location you use, what data services you're using on that. Kasten will work across all of them. We're completely 100% agnostic. And that gives us this unique ability to not only run or, not provide a vendor lock-in to you, as the sort of partners or the end users. The freedom of choice is completely yours, what you pick and choose. But also, we have a transform engine built into the product, which allows us to move between different vendors. So I could be running on OpenShift on-prem one day and decide, okay, I actually now want to move to AKS in the cloud. And I can actually move my workloads to there using Kasten, and I can modify how my application works to make it fit any target environment. So it doesn't really matter what that target environment is. I can modify the application to work in it, which gives you a multi-cloud DR strategy if you really want, and an anti-vendor lock-in approach. Okay. We also support virtual machines on Kubernetes. So, your virtual machines typically run in a sort of type 2 hypervisor scenario. But recently, with the advent of KubeVirt, you can actually run virtual machines inside containers on Kubernetes. Now, you might ask, why do I want to do that? The simple answer is, well, yes, we are doing we are seeing the disruption that Broadcom has brought to the market, and there's many people that want to move away from that. But secondly, there's a lot of customers who are on a journey towards containerization anyway. And then by moving those virtual machines onto the same platform that hosts the containers, it gives their developers a lot easier route to essentially refactor the applications that reside inside the virtual machines and move them to container native very, very quickly. And Kasten can provide the one platform that protects both the virtual machines and the containerized workloads on the same platform. Next slide, please. So there's a couple of other things we do around data intelligence. So we do automatic application discovery within the cluster, which means that you don't have to worry about programming in what you're actually backing up. We can automatically find and back up absolutely everything that your application relies on. Now, where this becomes quite important is if we are doing complex workloads. So backing up things like web servers, where I can just snapshot the PVCs where the data is stored, is relatively straightforward. But what if that workload has a database component to it? If I just snapshot a database, I will get an inconsistent backup, okay, because I've got transactions in the buffer, transactions in flight, etc., etc. I need to make sure that that backup is consistent. And how we do this is we have our own special project called Canister that allows us to do this. And we can do it in a number of different ways. I won't get into the sort of the technical aspect of it because that's a whole different topic. but it allows us to programmatically design and build scripting for whatever scenario we face. So whether it's Kafka, Cassandra, MySQL, Postgres, Mongo, you name it, we can build an approach that allows us to back that up consistently. And where this becomes really quite useful is when we talk about this blueprint bindings. Our scripts are called blueprints, okay? And we can bind these to workloads in such a way that you, the administrator of the platform, doesn't even have to go and do any complex work to actually bind these scripts to your workloads. So if you've got developers who are adding workloads or removing workloads constantly, especially on development clusters, they may miss things like adding policies, adding these annotations to their workloads to allow them to use these blueprints. We can actually create intelligent bindings that automatically go and find these workloads when they're put onto the cluster and automatically annotate them for you, such that doesn't matter what your developers do or your end customers do, those workloads will be backed up in the correct fashion. So that's quite an important way of removing, again, complexity, human error, etc. Next slide, please. And lastly, to iterate this, any Kubernetes distribution, as long as it's CNCF compliant, any application we can leverage through the use of Canister. Any backend storage infrastructure, doesn't matter what vendor you decide to choose. Multiple different distributions of Kubernetes virtualization, and we can integrate with a lot of third-party security services as well. So again, the point of this slide is just to highlight that really the choice is yours. We are not mandating any particular choice on your behalf. Okay, back to you, Simon.
Yeah, cheers, James, and thank you very much for that insight into our technology. I've just put this slide in here, which we use a lot with customers, particularly when they're usually pressing that they don't need to have backup and that Kubernetes is self-healing and that they're stateless. More often, the question that we ask our customers is from a recovery time objective. In the event that you had a disaster, how long would it take you to get back to full production? The average answer is around 10 days. Yes, it can be done. But as this picture illustrates, is that it's a bit like you get a lot of Lego pieces back together. There's a lot of mundane manual work that the DevOps team have to do to rebuild it, because this would sit with them, not the infrastructure team. And within that period of time, we had one customer who's now a customer of ours. We asked the question when they were pushing back as an objection on not having to have backup. They had 500,000 consumers using a medical application they were supporting as a managed service. And I said, well, what's the internal KPI, right, for getting the SLA, for getting the data back? And they said 24 hours. So sometimes it's just about disaster recovery. And obviously what James has just illustrated to you in his presentation is basically we can give that back to our customers in a very, very short period of time, build the Lego back for them and give it to them back exactly how it was before. And that's a good way of illustrating what it is that we actually do. So let's talk a bit about what we see when we look at our revenue that comes in from our deregistration, what we're doing with our partners, where we see the most use cases, and we've labeled these 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna label number 1 in a minute through some slides. James already touched on this. Some customers don't just come to us because they need backup. They come to us because they need that application mobility to avoid vendor lock-in. So if they're putting that storage into, for example, AWS, and at the moment they're not happy about the price they're paying per gigabyte, it's a big heavy lift to move and point those applications and store the storage data somewhere else. But with our technology, as James just presented, it allows our customers to do that in a very seamless and simple way that unlocks the ability for them to make cost savings and choose where their data is stored. And the third one I've just touched on, which is around disaster recovery, is that ability to get back to a point in time within the company's service level agreements, either to their customers or to them as a business themselves. So this is sometimes what our managed service providers look for, which you all know we have a big ecosystem of those with inside of Veeam across Europe. So what I want to talk to about is this great opportunity that's out there now that we are getting revenue from and our partners are making money from, and that the engineers at our partner side are hearing from the customers about their disgruntled end user that is not happy about Broadcom. And I guess you'd have to be living under a rock if you haven't read about the acquisition of Broadcom for VMware, how they changed the licenses and how in some cases they've increased the support cost by 1000%. So this is driving and fueling an opportunity for us and for our partner ecosystem. So for those of you on the call that are partners, this is an important subject you might already be aware of, but maybe you're not aware of how we support that. And for those of you might be in the Kubernetes space and you're talking to customers and you're selling, say, Red Hat OpenShift or Tanzu or SUSE, we obviously wouldn't know who you're backing. Then when they put the VMs into a containerized environment, then it absolutely needs to be backed up as it was in the cloud or on-premise in a traditional method, like it's done with Veeam and our 500,000 customers. So we did some research and we looked up what is driving this, right? We wanted to know how many organizations are potentially looking to move away from Broadcom, and it is absolutely huge, right? 56% are likely to decrease usage of VMware. Now, I can honestly support this because James and I live day to day talking to our partners, our GSIs and our customers when they're talking about their innate need to not want to be held to ransom by Broadcom, and they're looking at alternative technologies. Now, a lot of these customers we can support with our traditional Veeam backup, which many of them do have, so they're comfortable with that. But then when they move to the world of containerization, then it requires a product like Kasten, which is completely different to our VBR model, although the outcomes are the same in terms of recovering data. So when we look at the space where we really play, where Veeam Kasten is the ultimate solution for VMs in containerized environments, is within inside of the purple box that you see on the screen. And where we see also the most conversations that come to us through the partners is that the customers considering, looking at, piloting, buying Red Hat OpenShift, which opens up a great opportunity for us to align ourselves with Red Hat, which we have done and we do, okay? And it's how we fit our technology in with theirs, which is what we're going to talk about next. So just to give you a little flavor of Red Hat is, when I look at trends of growth, this was a slide from 2019 at the size of Red Hat. They're now 19,000 employees and turn over 6.5 billion. Yes, they have other products like RHEL and Ansible, but their growth in their Red Hat OpenShift space is huge. And they're constantly employing individuals and specialists that come into the business to sell their Red Hat OpenShift, which is great for them. But once they sell Red Hat OpenShift or attempt to sell it, the customer is going to park that and they're going to go and look at a backup solution, either to their current vendor, which there aren't many in this space who can provide a solution as fit for purpose as we have with Veeam Kasten. And then we become the de facto go-to in the conversations and the opportunities. And we have, for one example, we have a customer that is a Veeam backup customer that has 10,000 virtual machines. They've given themselves an 18-month timeline to move away from Broadcom. And we're currently in our later conversations to contract with Red Hat and Veeam for that. Then we have a customer that is not a Veeam customer that has got a standardized solution from Commvault, and they know that their technology can't provide what they need in terms of a native backup solution for VMs in containerization. And they're looking at moving 50,000 VMs within a 2-year period away from Broadcom. And this is one of the biggest banks in the world. And there are many, many more stories I could tell you and share with you about that. But it seems to me that almost all roads that lead to Rome lead to Red Hat OpenShift. And with that said, James touched on this, right? KubeVirt was brought out in about 2019 as open source development within inside of Kubernetes, and now the likes of Red Hat are supporting KubeVirt with their own technology, right, which is called Red Hat OpenShift Virtualization Engine. So to support their customers when they have the fit for the technology, the big question then is, how do I migrate those VMs, which is a big heavy lift technically, okay, and from a cost point of view, to Red Hat OpenShift? So to support that, Red Hat, I think they're one of the only distribution models out there today, brought out their own migration toolkit. So we leave them to do the migration of the VMs, but once they land inside of the, once the VMs are stacked into the nodes, then they're going to need to be backed up. I'm just going to stick that slide. So to support this, we've actually launched a particular SKU. So all of our partners in our ecosystem have availability of this. If you're not, then this just supports our absolute vision for what the future is to support Red Hat OpenShift, is that we have a SKU, we call it a skinny SKU, right? It's a limited SKU that just protects the applications, the VMs inside of the nodes. Okay, so it's just to emphasize that we, you know, some costs that are there, which is a lower cost than what we normally charge, which is the recommended retail price is $2,250. This sells at $1,750 per node. So for example, you can stack 40 VMs into a single node. And so for one of our customers who has a rather large renewal with Veeam, actually by migrating and moving away and relicensing with Kasten, we're probably something like about 30% lower cost than what they would pay to us in support, but it also gives them the ability to move away from Broadcom, but also modernize their architecture. If then the customer then later on wants to broaden out the license to back up all applications in a Kubernetes environment inside of a cluster, then they can step up by $500 to a full license. So I'm on the final slide now, so we're just drawing this presentation to a close. When we look at what we call traffic light systems, for what does an opportunity look like? What is the perfect cocktail? What is the perfect DNA that says to us we are required and there is a great opportunity there? And whilst all of them, well, mainly amber and green, present an opportunity, when I look at the green light, we're talking about there, and we're going back many months when I designed this slide, is if the customer is stateful, if the customer is looking to move away from Broadcom, if they're virtualizing VMs and containerization, if they're looking at Red Hat OpenShift, right? They're looking at application mobility. That is the perfect cocktail where we present the best solution for the end user, which is the majority of the opportunities across Europe that we are working on and where we are selling our application to those vendors at the end of the day. So we are on 7 minutes past 10. That draws our short presentation to a close. We'll move on to some Q&A, which in my experience of many, many years, doesn't often take too long, because I appreciate many of you may want to jump off to another call, or that you may want to take that up personally with James and I. So from us, from the next step, if we've piqued your interest today with what we've touched on with Veeam Kasten for cloud native backup, or the Broadcom Exodus around virtualization of VMs inside of Red Hat OpenShift, for example, then we'd love the opportunity to do a one-to-one meeting with you. That would probably most likely be a technical deep dive, and always best to get James to do a demonstration. If you understand the world of Kubernetes, which I hope you do, which is why you're here today, or you want a better understanding of what it looks like, then there's nothing better than actually walking through the platform. And I'm always proud when James demonstrates it, because it is a very technically brilliant solution. And when we're talking to customers, in my experience, we always get the wow factor, and it always, most always, ticks all the technical boxes and feature function boxes that they're looking for. So if you scan the QR code on the right hand side, that'll take you to my LinkedIn page. You can link in with me that way, and we can then converse on LinkedIn email. But if you want my email address, it's simon.williams@veeam.com, or reach out to Ruben, and then we'll set up a call and we can have a conversation afterwards. But in the meantime, before I close the call down, from the participants on the call today, thank you for attending. Have you got any questions that you want to pose in the chat? Just put it in there now. Okay, we don't have any. That doesn't mean it's a negative. Some people are shy. We can always save it till after the call. Ruben, once more on behalf of Veeam and for TD SYNNEX, thank you for the opportunity to give us to have a platform to voice our passion about our technology and what we offer to the marketplace today. Thank you for those that have attended. We do appreciate your time. This is being recorded, so Ruben will be sending that out to you so that you can share it with your peers. And I wish you all an enjoyable week and a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Simon and James, for the great presentation.